IDF. And Amir, I want to talk about that issue of intelligence, because Israel actually came out earlier in the week and said, we're expecting Iran to have a strike sometime after the Lebanese elections wrap up. Who is that message meant for? Was it meant for people in the north to prepare for these possible strikes, or was it meant to show Iran that we know what you're up to?
The latter, rather than the former. At least the officials in the north, the heads of the regional councils and of the towns there, knew well in advance. Actually, the shelters were prepared before the instructions were publicized. The Israeli Defense Forces timed the announcement for 2 minutes before President Trump was to start his announcement regarding the Iran nuclear deal, because they knew that the Iranians were also waiting for this announcement before they responded to an earlier attack. Now, what we have here is a very limited and focused campaign on both sides. The Iranians, they don't have the range, as you said, it's the outskirts of Damascus, some 30 to 40 kilometers from the border, and it's not precision-guided munitions, but nevertheless, they didn't want to hit Israeli settlements. They could have hit them because it's a statistical weapon. They can't pinpoint it, but they wanted to hit only those military positions. Israel, on the other hand, focuses on the Quds force of the Revolutionary Guard. The Israeli Defense Forces are not mentioning the Iranian regime at all, Khamenei, Rouhani, the Iranian military. They are out of the picture. It's a very limited tug of war.
Talk a bit about Iran's leaders, because Iran, of course, is facing a lot of problems economically. And we just heard about Trump pulling out of the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. Obviously, this is coming just a day after. We already have a conflict within that time frame. Talk a bit about some of the challenges that the Iranian leadership is facing right now, particularly from an economic perspective.
Yeah, certainly Iran right now is not the picture of economic health. We know it's an economy on the verge of collapse, suffered from a currency crisis last month. We also know, since the deal started, interestingly enough, there isn't one first-tier European bank that's actually willing to do business with Iran. It is facing economic collapse almost at its doorstep. Even earlier this morning, I'll just echo Victor Lieberman's words when he said that the young generation in Iran, mostly the students and the youth, they don't really align with the leadership, and they do hope for progress. So yes, it is facing an internal crisis of legitimacy, an internal economic crisis. And interestingly enough as well, Rouhani, we have to understand this, Rouhani within Iran is seen as a moderate in comparison, that is, to previous his predecessors. Okay, so within Iran, he's seen as a moderate, and one of the worries that analysts and speculators said about this deal, about withdrawing from the JCPOA, or Trump's decision to withdraw from the nuclear deal, was that it might have an impact as such that it would embolden hardliners within Iran. And as it goes in Iran, there are hardliner currents that are much more extreme and much more violent, I would say, than Rouhani. He is considered a moderate within the country, but again, this is a country on the verge of economic collapse.
And Amir, you had a point that you wanted to make.
Foiling the Iranian attack and attacking the Iranian infrastructure in Syria sends a message to the regime and to Iranian public opinion. Disavow the hardliners, and especially the Quds force, because not only do they cost a lot of money, they're also not effective. Israel is blocking their attempt, so there is no use for the Iranians in them. Please let them go and be more moderate.
$13 billion, actually, that Iran has earmarked to support its efforts throughout the region. That, of course, coming from Israeli Defense Minister Victor Lieberman. Isn't it strange that Hezbollah didn't get involved in this?
Well, it did in a way, indirectly, because the personnel in the rocket batteries were partly Hezbollah. They were not Iranians. Iranians were in control, in command, but the personnel were Shiite militias and Hezbollah. But Hezbollah in Lebanon, first of all, waited until the elections this past Sunday. They didn't want to get involved because Nasrallah's message was, I am Lebanese, not Iranian. And they know that Israel, with its intelligence capability, could also hit back at Hezbollah. So for the time being, they are lying low.
Is this the calm before the storm?
Well, I think there are a few game changers that really could draw this into a further escalation and a further conflict. One of them, as I mentioned, is any harming of IDF soldiers. If we see IDF soldiers harmed by Iran or by any proxy of Iran, that is, on the border, that could draw Israel into a further conflict. The other thing that could draw Israel into a conflict would be the kidnapping of any citizens or IDF soldiers, or the assassination, on the other end, the assassination of very high-profile individuals. Those are the triggers that tend to pull into further escalation.
All right, and
But
I'm
from
sorry.
tomorrow on, for the next 3 days, Jerusalem and Gaza are into focus.
That's very true, and we will be covering that. And up next, more about the international implications. Stay tuned.